The dust storm rolled across the valley like God's own judgment, and Cole Drifter stood watching it swallow the horizon. 3 years since he'd last set foot in Cedar Ridge. 3 years since the fire that took everything the ranch. The woman who'd believed in him, the life they'd built together. Now the town needed him. The telegram burned in his pocket. Come home. Sarah's daughter needs you. Sarah. Even her name was a wound that wouldn't heal. The wind picked up, carrying memories sharp as broken glass. He'd sworn never to return, but some promises were meant to be broken. Little Emma was alone now, orphaned by the fever that had swept through last winter. Cole adjusted his worn hat and turned toward the town below. The past waited there, patient as stone. But maybe, just maybe, so did redemption. The storm was coming. This time, he wouldn't run. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Cedar Ridge hadn't changed much, yet everything felt different. The same weathered buildings lined Main Street, their false fronts casting familiar shadows in the afternoon sun. Cole kept his head low as he rode past Miller's General Store, where old Jacob Miller still swept the porch with the same methodical strokes he'd used for 20 years. The town seemed to hold its breath. Curtains twitched. Conversations died mid-sentence. Cole Drifter had returned. He found her at the schoolhouse, 7-year-old Emma, Sarah's daughter, sitting alone on the steps. She had her mother's golden hair, but her eyes were all her own deep brown, serious, too old for such a young face. She wore a faded cotton dress that had seen too many washings, and her small hands clutched a worn primer. "You're him," she said simply, not a question. Cole dismounted slowly, his spurs singing a lonely song against the hard-packed earth. "I knew your mama. Everyone says you left her to die." The words hit harder than any fist ever had. Cole removed his hat, running weathered fingers through hair gone gray at the temples. "They're not wrong, little one. I should have been there." Emma studied him with that unnerving directness children possessed. "Mama said you'd come back. Said you were the kind of man who kept promises, even the ones nobody else remembered. Your mama saw good in folks where there wasn't any. She was right about the promise, wasn't she? You're here." Before Cole could answer, boots thundered on the boardwalk. Thomas Brooks, now wearing the sheriff's star, stood with his hand resting on his Colt. Time had been kinder to him. His face still held the righteous certainty that had always made Cole's teeth ache. 3 years, Drifter. 3 years of peace since you left. Now you ride back in here like nothing happened. The girl needs stability, a proper home. Judge Carter's already got papers drawn up. The banker and his wife want to adopt her." Emma's fingers found Cole's sleeve, gripping tight enough to wrinkle the worn fabric. It was such a small gesture, yet it shifted everything. "Mama said he'd come," Emma whispered. "She said he'd come when I needed him most." Thomas Brooks's expression softened, just for a moment. Then the mask of authority slipped back into place. "You've got until sundown to state your business and move on. Drifter." Cole looked down at Emma's upturned face, seeing Sarah's faith reflected there, mixing with a child's desperate hope. The storm hadn't passed, it was just beginning. The abandoned homestead sat 3 miles outside town, where Sarah had lived her final months. Cole hadn't been able to bring himself to visit before, but now, with Emma's small hand in his, he climbed the weathered steps. The door hung crooked on its hinges, testament to the town's indifference after Sarah's passing. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of afternoon light. Emma moved through the rooms with practiced familiarity, her fingers trailing along surfaces that still held her mother's presence. She stopped before a cedar chest in the corner, its brass hinges tarnished but intact. "Mama kept things in here," she said, lifting the heavy lid with effort. Cole helped her, and together they looked down at the carefully folded contents. A wedding dress, never worn, letters tied with faded ribbon, and beneath it all, a leather journal with Sarah's initials pressed into the cover. Emma handed it to him. "She wrote about you," Cole's hands trembled as he opened the journal. Sarah's neat script filled page after page observations about the town, pressed wildflowers, sketches of the valley, and yes, entries about him, about their plans, about the fire that changed everything. Cole came to me today with eyes full of ghosts. One entry read, "He blames himself for things beyond any man's control. I told him the only tragedy would be letting guilt steal our future. He promised to return. I believe he will. When he's ready to forgive himself." She never stopped believing, Emma said quietly. Even when she got sick, she said you'd come back, said you'd know when you were needed most. A shadow fell across the doorway. Thomas Brooks stood there, his badge catching the light. Behind him, two deputies waited with hands near their guns. "Time's up. Drifter."
Cole closed the journal carefully, standing to face the sheriff. "The girl has no one else. She has the whole town looking after her interests. The same town that let her mother die alone, the same town that left this house to rot." Cole's voice carried no anger, just tired truth. "You know as well as I do what happens to orphans who get parceled out to the highest bidder." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. He'd been sweet on Sarah himself once. Before Cole arrived, everyone knew it. The banker's family is respectable. They'll give her advantages you can't. They'll give her a roof and 3 meals. Cole agreed. But will they tell her about her mother's laugh? Will they show her how Sarah could read the weather in cloud formations? Will they teach her the songs Sarah used to sing? Emma stepped forward, the journal clutched to her chest. "Mama left something else," she said to Thomas. "A letter. For the judge." Thomas frowned. "What letter?" The child produced an envelope from the journal's pages, sealed with wax. Sarah's careful script spelled out Judge Carter's name. "She said to give it to him if anyone tried to take me from family." "You don't have family, child," Thomas said gently. Emma looked up at Cole, then back at the sheriff. "Mama said family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's promises kept, even when keeping them hurts." The deputies shifted restlessly. The sun was dropping lower, painting the abandoned house in shades of gold and shadow. Cole could see the doubt creeping into Thomas's eyes. The sheriff was many things, but he wasn't cruel. He'd loved Sarah too, in his way. "1 week, Thomas said finally. "You get 1 week to prove you can provide for her proper. The judge will want to see that letter, and he'll want to know you've got means to raise her right." Cole nodded, understanding the weight of what was being offered. 1 week to build a life from ashes. 1 week to prove himself worthy of Sarah's faith. As the lawmen retreated, Emma slipped her hand back into Cole's. "Mama always said the hardest battles aren't fought with guns. Your mama was a wise woman. She also said you were too stubborn to know when you were beaten." Despite everything, Cole found himself almost smiling. That sounds like her, too. The sun touched the horizon, setting the desert ablaze. Somewhere in that journal were Sarah's dreams, preserved in ink and hope. Cole had 1 week to make them real. The storm that had started at noon was only beginning to show its true shape. The first day of Cole's week began before dawn. He stood in the doorway of the abandoned homestead, watching the horizon lighten from black to deep purple. Emma slept on a makeshift bed he'd fashioned from hay and Sarah's old quilts, her breathing steady and trusting. The weight of that trust pressed harder than any burden he'd carried. By the time the sun crested the hills, Cole had already repaired the broken fence posts along the property line. His hands, once quick with a gun, now worked with deliberate care, wrapping wire and setting posts deep. Each strike of the hammer was a promise to Sarah, to Emma, to himself. "You're working early." Cole turned to find Grace Hayworth standing at the gate, a basket in her hands. She'd been the school teacher for 15 years, had taught Sarah her letters when they were both young. Her graying hair was pulled back severely, but her eyes held unexpected warmth. "Miss Hayworth," Cole acknowledged, straightening. I brought breakfast. The child needs proper meals. She pushed through the gate without invitation, her long skirt sweeping the dusty ground. Sarah spoke of you often. Mr. Drifter. Even after the fire. She had more faith than sense. Perhaps, or perhaps she saw something worth saving. Grace set the basket on the porch steps. The whole town's talking. Thomas Brooks has been making his rounds, stirring up old fears. Says you're dangerous. He's not wrong. Aren't you tired of that story? Grace's voice carried the same steel she used to quiet unruly students. Sarah was... She believed people could change, could choose to be more than their worst moments. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She brightened at seeing Grace. Miss Hayworth, did you bring those biscuits with honey? Indeed I did, child, and preserves your mother helped me put up last summer. As they ate, Cole noticed how Grace watched him not with fear or judgment, but with the calculating look of someone taking measure. When Emma wandered off to chase a butterfly, Grace leaned forward. The banker, Samuel Rivers, he's been planning this adoption for months. Has his wife convinced Emma needs what he calls proper society upbringing? But I've taught that woman's children, cold as January creek water, every one of them. Why tell me this? Because Sarah asked me to watch for you. Said if you came back, I was to help however I could. Grace stood, brushing crumbs from her skirt. I have influence with some of the town women, the church auxiliary, the quilting circle. Not everyone agrees with Thomas Brooks or Samuel Rivers. I can't ask you to take sides against the town. You're not asking. I'm offering. She paused at the gate. Sarah saved my nephew's life once, sat with him through scarlet fever when even his own mother was too afraid. I owe her memory more than I can repay. Besides, this town's gotten too comfortable with Samuel Rivers deciding what's proper for everyone. After she left, Cole found Emma sitting by her mother's grave marker, a simple wooden cross he'd fashioned that morning. She was talking quietly, her words carried away by the wind. What are you telling her? He asked, settling beside her. That you fixed the fence, that Miss Hayworth brought breakfast, that you don't smile much, but your eyes are kind when you think no one's looking. Cole felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of bonds he'd worn so long he'd forgotten they were there. Your mama always saw too much. She said that's what love does, makes you see clear. That afternoon, 3 more women from town arrived. They brought lumber, paint, and determination. By evening, the broken shutters hung straight, and fresh whitewash brightened the walls. No one mentioned Thomas Brooks' warnings or Samuel Rivers' plans. They worked in companionable silence, the kind of community Sarah had always believed in. As the sun set, Cole stood on the porch. Emma had helped him repair, watching the desert turn gold. The child sat beside him, swinging her legs over the edge. Do you think Mama knows, she asked, that you came back? Cole thought of Sarah's journal, her unwavering faith, the women who'd spent their day helping strangers because of remembered kindness. I think she knew all along. The stars emerged one by one, each a small light against the darkness. 6 days remained to prove himself, but for the first time in 3 years, Cole believed it might be enough. The storm that had driven him here was becoming something else, a chance for the redemption Sarah had always insisted was possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Samuel Rivers wouldn't give up easily, and Thomas Brooks had the law on his side. But tonight, in a house made new by willing hands and generous hearts, Cole Drifter allowed himself to hope. The 4th day brought unexpected visitors. Cole was teaching Emma how to properly mend a harness when the sound of approaching horses made them both look up. 3 riders approached through the morning heat, Samuel Rivers flanked by 2 men Cole didn't recognize. Their clothes marked them as city folk, lawyers perhaps, certainly not men who worked with their hands. Rivers dismounted with the careful precision of someone unaccustomed to horses. His suit, despite the dust of travel, remained impeccable. The banker's face held the satisfied expression of a man who believed he'd already won. Mr. Drifter, Rivers said, not bothering with pleasantries. I've brought witnesses to document the conditions here. The judge will want a full report on the child's living situation. The two men began walking around the property, making notes in small leather books. One examined the repaired fence posts with obvious skepticism. The other peered through the windows, cataloging what Cole knew they'd describe as inadequate furnishings. Emma pressed closer to Cole's side. Why are they looking at our things? Just doing their job, little one. Rivers heard the exchange and smiled thinly. My wife has already prepared a room for Emma. Pink wallpaper, imported from San Francisco, dolls from France, everything a young lady requires for proper development. I don't like pink, Emma said quietly. Children rarely know what's best for them, Rivers replied, his tone dismissive. That's why they need proper guardians. Cole felt the old anger stir, the kind that once would have ended with gunplay, but Emma's hand in his kept him grounded. The child has a guardian. A drifter with no means of support, no property to his name, no standing in the community. Rivers pulled out a document. I've done my research, Mr. Drifter. 3 years absent. Before that, a string of violent encounters across 4 territories. Is that the influence you think suitable for an impressionable child? One of the city men returned, his nose wrinkled. The roof needs significant repairs. The well water should be tested. No proper stove in the kitchen, just an open hearth. All things that can be fixed, Cole said evenly. With what funds? Rivers asked. You've been here 4 days. Have you secured employment, opened an account at the bank, made any provisions for the child's education, her medical needs, her future? Before Cole could respond, a wagon appeared on the horizon. As it drew closer, he recognized old Doc Hartley driving, with Grace Hayworth beside him. The wagon bed held something covered with a tarp. Doc Hartley climbed down, his movements showing his 70 years, but his eyes sharp as ever. Morning, Samuel. Boys. He nodded to the lawyers. Heard you were making an inspection. Thought I'd do the same. This isn't a medical matter, doctor. Everything involving a child's welfare is a medical matter. Doc walked past Rivers to Emma, kneeling despite his creaking knees. How are you feeling? Young lady eating well? Yes, sir. Miss Hayworth brings food, and Cole makes good beans. Let me see your hands. Doc examined them gently. Clean. No cuts or bruises. Good. He stood, fixing Rivers with a look. The child appears healthy and well cared for. Grace had pulled back the tarp, revealing a cast-iron stove. The church auxiliary took up a collection. For the house. More wagons were approaching now. Cole recognized several faces: the blacksmith, the Mexican family who ran the feed store, even Widow Morrison, who rarely left her house. They brought lumber, shingles, a rocking chair, sacks of flour and beans. What is this? Rivers demanded. Community, Grace said simply. Something you might not understand. Samuel, locked away in that bank of yours counting other people's money. The blacksmith, a mountain of a man named Josiah, began unloading lumber. Sarah helped my wife birth our son when Doc was away. We don't forget. The Mexican woman, Maria, handed Emma a cornhusk doll. Your mama. She taught my girls English. Now they read better than me. Within hours, the homestead had transformed into a construction site. Men repaired the roof while women organized the house. The lawyers stood awkwardly, their notes forgotten as they watched the community work. Rivers's face had grown red. This changes nothing. Charity isn't stability. When these people go home, what then? Then I'll work, Cole said. Josiah offered me a job at the smithy. The Mexicans need help with their harvest. I've got 2 hands and a strong back. Manual labor. You think that's appropriate for raising a young lady? Emma stepped forward, her 7-year-old frame straight with dignity Sarah would have been proud of. My mama did manual labor. She washed clothes and mended shirts and grew vegetables. She said honest work was nothing to be ashamed of. The crowd had grown quiet, watching the child face down the banker.
Mr. Rivers, Emma continued, you say you want what's best for me, but you never asked what I want. You never asked about my mama's songs or my favorite stories or what makes me laugh. Cole knows all those things. He knows because he loved my mama, and he's learning to love me. Doc Hartley cleared his throat. Samuel, I'll be making my report to Judge Carter, too, about the child's health, both physical and emotional. I think you'll find my medical opinion carries considerable weight. Rivers looked around at the assembled townspeople, calculating. He was a banker, used to dealing in certainties, but public sentiment was a currency he couldn't control. This isn't over, he said finally, gathering his lawyers. The judge will make his decision based on facts, not emotions. As they rode away, Maria touched Cole's arm. Sarah, she knew you would come. She told me. He carries too much guilt, but love is stronger than guilt. She was right. No. Cole watched Emma helping to sort nails for the workers, her small face determined. 3 days remained before the judge's decision. The house would be ready, but would he be? Could a man who'd spent 3 years running from his failures learn to stand still long enough to be a father? The answer came in Emma's smile as she held up a perfectly straight nail she'd found. Sometimes redemption came not in grand gestures, but in small moments of purpose. One nail, one board, one day at a time. The 6th day dawned with an unexpected storm rolling in from the mountains. Lightning split the dawn sky while thunder shook the newly repaired windows. Emma stood at the window, her small face pressed against the glass, watching the clouds build. Scared? Cole asked, joining her. Mama said storms wash things clean, make everything new. She turned to him. Are you scared about tomorrow? Tomorrow, Judge Carter would arrive, would look at what they'd built in a week and decide if it was enough. Cole had spent the night sleepless, running through arguments, evidence, possibilities. A little, he admitted. Emma slipped her hand into his. Mama also said being scared just means something matters. The rain began in earnest, turning the dusty ground to mud. Cole had planned to finish the chicken coop, to show the judge they could be self-sufficient, but the storm had other plans. Instead, they sat by the fire, Emma reading from her primer while Cole mended a bridle. A knock at the door interrupted the peaceful morning. Cole opened it to find Thomas Brooks, water streaming from his hat, but this time he stood alone, no badge visible. Can I come in? Cole stepped aside. Thomas entered, removing his hat, water pooling around his boots. He looked older than Cole remembered, lines carved deep by duty and disappointment. Coffee, Cole offered. Thomas nodded, accepting the tin cup gratefully. For a moment, they stood in silence. Two men who'd loved the same woman, who'd lost her in different ways. I came to warn you, Thomas said finally. Rivers has been to see the judge, made his case already, showed him bank records, character witnesses from back east, made you sound like the devil himself. And you're telling me this why? Thomas stared into his coffee. Because Sarah asked me to look after Emma if anything happened. And I've been thinking about what looking after really means. It doesn't mean handing her to the richest family. It means doing what Sarah would have wanted. She wanted me to come back. I know. The admission seemed to pain him. Found the letters she wrote but never sent. Dozens of them. All addressed to you. He pulled a bundle from inside his coat, wrapped in oilcloth against the rain. Thought you should have them. Might help with the judge. Cole took the letters, feeling their weight, Sarah's words, her faith, preserved in ink. There's more, Thomas continued. Rivers has debts. Gambling debts from a failed venture in California. He needs respectability. Needs a proper family image to secure new investors. Emma's not a child to him. She's a prop. Will you testify to that? Thomas stood, setting down his cup. I'm still sheriff. I deal in facts, not suspicions. But Doc Hartley might know more.
Rivers had him examine his wife last month. She's been unwell. Laudanum. Doc suspects. Not exactly the stable home Rivers is promising. As Thomas reached the door, he paused. I loved her too, you know, Sarah. But she chose you. Even when you weren't here. That has to mean something. After he left, Cole opened one of the letters. Sarah's familiar handwriting blurred as rain drummed harder on the roof. Cole, Emma asked about her father today. I told her he was a good man who lost his way but would find it again. She said she'd wait. We both will. The house is so quiet without you. The town gossips, but I don't care. I know who you really are beneath the reputation. Come home when you're ready. We'll be here. The storm intensified, but inside the house felt warmer somehow. Emma had fallen asleep in the chair, her primer open on her lap. Cole covered her with Sarah's old quilt and returned to the letters. Each one was dated, chronicling 3 years of steadfast belief. She wrote about Emma's first words, her first steps, her love of butterflies. She wrote about the town, the seasons, the small victories and defeats of daily life. But mostly she wrote about forgiveness, not hers to give, but his to accept from himself. The last letter was dated a week before her death. Cole, I dreamed you came home last night. Emma ran to you, and you lifted her high like you used to do with the Henderson boys' kites. I woke happy. The fever is worse, but I'm not afraid. I know you'll come. Not for me, it's too late for that, but for her. She needs you. More than that, you need her. She's your redemption, my love, your second chance. Don't waste it. The storm began to ease as afternoon approached. Sun broke through the clouds, setting the wet world to sparkling. Emma woke, stretched, and came to stand beside him. Were those Mama's letters? Yes. What did she say? Cole folded the last letter carefully. She said to tell you she loves you, and that everything's going to be all right. Emma nodded solemnly. She tells me that too, sometimes, in dreams. Tomorrow would bring the judge, the decision, the future. But today, in a house filled with Sarah's words and Emma's trust, Cole Drifter felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years' peace. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. Sarah had been right about that, too. The evening light slanted through the windows, golden and warm. Emma helped him prepare supper, chattering about her lessons, her plans for a garden, her hopes for chickens, normal things, family things. The life Sarah had envisioned, finally taking root. One more day. One more chance to prove that redemption wasn't just a word in Sarah's letters, but a truth a man could build his life upon. One board, one nail, one quiet moment at a time. Judge Carter arrived at noon on the 7th day, his black carriage raising dust clouds visible from the homestead. Cole stood on the porch, Emma beside him in the yellow dress Grace had brought, Sarah's favorite color. The house behind them bore witness to a week's worth of community effort: new shingles, fresh paint, mended fences, a garden already showing green shoots. The judge was younger than Cole expected, perhaps 40, with keen eyes that missed nothing. He stepped down from the carriage, followed by a clerk carrying ledgers, and finally Samuel Rivers and his lawyers. Rivers looked confident, almost smug, clutching a leather portfolio. Mr. Drifter, Judge Carter acknowledged. Mr. Rivers, shall we proceed? They gathered in the main room, the judge taking Sarah's rocking chair while the others stood. The new stove Grace and the church ladies had installed gleamed in the corner. Fresh bread cooled on the table, Emma's first successful attempt that morning. Rivers went first, laying out his case with banker's precision. Financial statements, character testimonials from Eastern associates, plans for Emma's education at a finishing school in San Francisco. He painted a picture of opportunity, refinement, culture, everything a young lady required. The child deserves better than this, Rivers concluded, gesturing at the simple room. Better than a life of manual labor and poverty. Judge Carter turned to Cole. Your response? Cole pulled out Sarah's letters, her journal,
the document Emma had produced that first day. Sarah Cumberland left instructions. Your Honor, she wanted her daughter raised by someone who knew her values, her dreams, her love. A love doesn't pay for shoes or schooling, Rivers interjected. No, Cole agreed, but it teaches a child they matter, that they're more than an investment or a symbol of respectability. The judge read Sarah's letter silently, his expression revealing nothing. When he finished, he looked at Emma. Child, come here. Emma approached slowly, her small hands clasped together. Do you understand what we're discussing? Yes, sir. Where I'm going to live. And what are your thoughts? Emma glanced at Rivers, then at Cole, before facing the judge directly. Mr. Rivers has nice things. His house is big and his wife wears pretty dresses. But he's never asked me about Mama. He doesn't know she sang while she worked, or that she could name every star in the Big Dipper, or that she cried when she had to sell her mother's ring to buy seed. She paused, gathering courage. Cole knows. He knew Mama's heart, and he came back, even though it hurt. That's what Mama said love does, it comes back, even when it's hard. The judge leaned back, studying the child. You're 7 years old, Emma. These are grown-up matters. Mama said wisdom doesn't always come with age. Sometimes it comes with paying attention. A knock interrupted them. Doc Hartley entered, followed by Grace and several townswomen. Behind them came Thomas Brooks, still in uniform but clearly uncomfortable. Your Honor, Doc Hartley said, we have information relevant to this decision. The judge nodded for them to continue. Doc Hartley spoke first, carefully choosing his words about Mrs. Rivers's condition, her dependence on laudanum, her inability to care for herself, let alone a child. Grace presented a petition signed by 43 townspeople supporting Cole's guardianship. Even Thomas Brooks, when called upon, admitted that Cole had shown more concern for Emma's welfare in 1 week than Rivers had shown in the months since Sarah's death. Rivers's face grew red. This is gossip, hearsay. This is community. Judge Carter interrupted. Something that seems to matter here. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the desert stretching endlessly beyond. When he turned back, his decision was clear in his eyes. Sarah Cumberland chose her daughter's guardian. I see no reason to overturn a mother's dying wish, especially when that wish is supported by evidence of genuine care and community backing. He looked directly at Cole. Mr. Drifter, you are hereby granted full guardianship of Emma Cumberland. Raise her well. Rivers stormed out, his lawyers trailing behind. The townspeople erupted in quiet congratulations, but Cole barely heard them. He was looking at Emma, who stood smiling up at him with Sarah's faith shining in her eyes. The storm had passed. The redemption Sarah promised had come, not in thunder and lightning, but in the quiet certainty of a child's trust and a community's embrace. Home. They were home. 3 months had passed since Judge Carter's decision. The autumn sun painted the valley gold as Cole stood watching Emma help Josiah at the forge. Her small hands, protected by oversized leather gloves, held the tongs steady while the blacksmith showed her how to shape a horseshoe. The child's face glowed with concentration and pride. She's got steady hands, Josiah remarked, wiping sweat from his brow. Natural feel for the work. Cole nodded, remembering Sarah's words about honest labor. Emma had taken to visiting the smithy twice a week, learning not just the trade but the patience and precision it required. The rest of her days were spent with Grace at the schoolhouse, her quick mind absorbing lessons like desert soil drinking rain. Cole, Emma called, holding up the horseshoe she'd helped forge. Look what I made. That's fine work, he said, and meant it. The shoe wasn't perfect, but it was solid, functional like the life they were building together. Walking home that evening, Emma chattered about her day, about the horses that came for shoeing, about the new arithmetic Grace was teaching. Cole listened, responding when needed, comfortable in this new rhythm they'd found. The house Sarah had left behind had become a true home. The garden Emma tended showed promise of a good harvest.
The chicken coop he'd finished housed 6 laying hens that Emma had named after flowers Rose, Lily, Daisy, Violet, Iris, and, peculiarly, Cactus. Cactus doesn't fit, he'd told her when she'd chosen the names. She's prickly but beautiful, Emma had replied with Sarah's certainty. Like the desert. Now, as they crested the hill toward home, they saw a rider waiting by the gate. Cole's hand moved instinctively to his hip, finding nothing. He'd put the gun away the day after the judge's decision, locked it in a trunk in the barn. Old habits died hard, but they could die. The rider was Thomas Brooks, out of uniform, looking older and somehow lighter. Evening, Thomas said, dismounting. Not here officially. Just thought you should know Samuel Rivers left town. Took his wife back east. Banks got a new manager. Younger fellow from Denver. Seems decent enough. Cole absorbed this news, feeling one more shadow lift from their future. Coffee. Thomas accepted, and they sat on the porch while Emma fed the chickens, her voice carrying as she scolded Cactus for pecking Violet. You did right by her, Thomas said quietly. Sarah would be pleased. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. Thomas set down his cup, stood to leave, then paused. I'm hanging up the badge come spring, thinking of trying my hand at ranching. Peaceful work. After he left, Cole found Emma sitting by Sarah's grave, talking as she did every evening. He'd learned not to interrupt these conversations. Instead, he went inside and started supper beans and cornbread, Emma's favorite. She came in as darkness fell, washing her hands in the basin by the door. Mama says you're doing good, she announced matter-of-factly. Cole had stopped questioning these pronouncements, whether memory or imagination. They brought the child comfort. That's so. She says you're learning to be still. That stillness isn't the same as stopping. The wisdom in those words, whether from Sarah or Emma's own understanding, struck deep. For 3 years, he'd run from stillness, equating it with the paralysis of grief. But this daily rhythm of work and meals and evening conversations, this was different. This was life taking root. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Cole sat on the porch with one of Sarah's journals. He'd been reading them slowly, learning the woman he'd loved through her private thoughts. Tonight's entry was dated 2 years into his absence. Emma asked if her daddy was a bad man. I told her no, just a hurt one. She asked if hurt people always run away. I said sometimes they do, until they learn that running from pain means running from love, too. She thought about that, then said she'd wait for him to stop running. Children understand more than we credit them for. Cole closed the journal, looking out at the stars Sarah had named for Emma, the Big Dipper, which Emma called the Great Ladle, Orion, whom she'd renamed the Dancing Man, the North Star, which she simply called Hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Winter was coming, and with it, the hard work of survival. Emma needed new boots. The roof needed more repairs before the snow, and he'd promised to help Maria's family with their harvest. But tonight, in this moment of stillness that wasn't stopping, Cole Drifter felt something he hadn't experienced in years: contentment. The redemption Sarah had promised hadn't come all at once. It came in small moments: Emma's laughter, a successful day's work, a neighbor's nod of respect. It came in learning to be a father to a child who'd already lost too much. Most of all, it came in discovering that love wasn't just about grand gestures or desperate acts. Sometimes love was just being present, being still, being home. Winter came hard that year, the first Cole and Emma faced together as a true family. The snow fell early and deep, transforming the desert into something almost unrecognizable. Emma, now 8 years old, stood at the window watching the white blanket, everything familiar, her breath fogging the glass. Mama loved the first snow, she said quietly. She said it made everything new. Cole joined her at the window, his coffee steaming in the cold morning air. In the months since the judge's decision, they'd settled into rhythms that felt both new and ancient: morning chores, evening stories, Sunday services where the whole town now welcomed them without reservation.
She was right about most things, Cole said. Emma turned to him with those serious eyes that still carried too much wisdom for her years. Were you scared that first week when everyone was watching to see if you'd be good enough? The question caught him off guard, though he should have known better. Emma had a way of cutting straight to the heart of things, just like her mother. Terrified, he admitted. Still am sometimes. Why? Cole set down his coffee, choosing his words carefully. Because loving someone means you can lose them. And I already lost your mama once. Can't bear the thought of failing you too. Emma slipped her hand into his, her fingers small but strong. You didn't fail Mama. She knew you'd come back. She wrote it in her journal. I read it. She said love isn't about never falling down. It's about always getting back up. Before Cole could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. He opened it to find Grace Hayworth standing in the snow, her face grave. There's been an accident, she said. The Hendersons' wagon overturned in the storm. Both parents are hurt bad. Their 3 children. She didn't need to finish. Cole was already reaching for his coat. I'll go help, he said, then paused, looking at Emma. In the old days, he would have ridden off without a thought, chasing whatever needed doing. But now he had responsibilities here. We'll go, Emma corrected, already pulling on her boots. The Henderson children know me from school. They'll be scared. And so they went together into the storm. Cole and Emma and half the town, working through the day to rescue the trapped family, tend the injured, care for the frightened children. Cole watched Emma comfort the youngest Henderson boy, singing the same songs Sarah had once sung to her, and felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the last bonds of guilt he'd carried. That night, with the Hendersons safe and their children sleeping in the spare room, Cole found himself on the porch despite the cold. The snow had stopped, leaving the world crystalline and still. Emma joined him, wrapped in Sarah's old quilt. You're thinking about Mama, she said. Not a question. Always am, but differently now. How? Cole considered his words. Used to think about her with guilt. All the things I should have done, should have said. Now I think about her with gratitude for believing in something I couldn't see in myself. Emma leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge between the clouds. Then she said, I've been thinking about what you said, about being scared of losing people. What about it? Maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that we get to love them at all, even if it's not for as long as we want. She paused, then added, Mama only had me for 7 years, but she made them count. You've had me for almost a year now. We're making it count too, aren't we? Cole pulled her closer, this child who taught him daily about resilience and faith. We are. Spring came slowly that year, the snow lingering in shadowed valleys long after the desert floor bloomed. Emma turned 9 on a day when the whole world seemed to be celebrating wildflowers carpeting the hills, birds returning from southern travels, the air sweet with promise. The town threw her a party at the schoolhouse. Even Samuel Rivers' replacement at the bank contributed to the gift fund that bought her new books and a writing desk of her own. Thomas Brooks, now fully retired and working his small ranch, brought her a colt gentle but spirited, perfect for a growing girl. Every child needs a horse of their own, he said gruffly, not quite meeting Cole's eyes. They'd never be friends, but they'd found a kind of peace. That evening, after the celebrations ended and the house grew quiet, Cole found Emma at her new desk, writing carefully in a journal of her own. What are you writing? He asked. Our story, she said simply, so I don't forget. And so someday, when I have children, I can tell them about Mama and about you, and about how families sometimes come together in ways nobody expects. Cole read over her shoulder. My name is Emma Cumberland Drifter. I am 9 years old. My mama went to heaven when I was 7.
and my papa came home to take care of me. He wasn't my papa by blood, but Mama always said love makes families more than blood does. This is our story." The name stopped him cold. "Emma Cumberland Drifter." She looked up at him, suddenly uncertain. "Is that okay? I know we never talked about it, but everyone calls me Emma Drifter now anyway." And I thought, if you don't want... "It's perfect," he said, his voice rough. "It's absolutely perfect." Later that night, Cole stood once more at Sarah's grave, now surrounded by the wildflowers Emma planted and tended faithfully. The wooden marker had been replaced with stone, simple but lasting. Sarah Cumberland, beloved mother, faithful heart, her love lives on. "We did it, Sarah," he said quietly. "That redemption you promised, we found it. Not all at once, not without pain, but we found it. Emma's growing strong and kind and brave. She's got your faith and maybe, just maybe, some of my stubbornness. She's going to be fine. We both are." The wind stirred, warm and gentle, carrying the scent of desert blooms and distant rain. Somewhere an owl called, and another answered. The world went on, as it always did, but somehow different now, softened by mercy, brightened by hope. Walking back to the house, Cole saw Emma reading by lamplight in her window. She looked up and waved, and he waved back. This child who had become his salvation, this unexpected gift from a woman whose love had transcended even death. Home. They were home. The next morning brought news that would test their newfound peace. A letter arrived from a law firm in San Francisco. Sarah had a sister there, one she'd been estranged from for years. The sister had learned of Sarah's death and wanted to claim Emma, could provide advantages, education, society, opportunities Cole could never match. Emma read the letter once, then walked to the stove and dropped it into the flames. "Emma." "No," she said firmly. "I choose my family. Mama taught me that, and you proved it. We stay together." And they did. Through seasons and years, through Emma's growing up and Cole's growing old, through her marriage to a good man who understood why Cole would always be her true father, through grandchildren who called him Papa Cole and climbed on his knee for stories about their brave grandmother Sarah. The redemption Sarah had promised came not in grand gestures but in daily choices to stay, to love, to build something lasting from the ashes of loss. It came in learning that sometimes the families we choose are stronger than the ones we're born to, that love can bridge any distance, even death itself. Years later, when Cole's hair had gone white and his steps had slowed, he still sat on that same porch each evening, often with Emma beside him, her own children playing in the yard, and sometimes, when the light was just right and the desert wind carried memory on its wings, he could almost see Sarah smiling, knowing her faith had been justified, her love fulfilled, her promise kept. The storm had passed. The healing was complete. They were, all of them, finally and forever, home. I've told you this story because I needed to tell it, needed to speak these truths aloud. We spend so much time running from our failures, don't we? Like Cole, we carry our guilt across years and miles, believing ourselves beyond redemption. But Sarah knew something we forget, that love doesn't keep score, doesn't demand perfection. It only asks that we show up, even when we're broken, especially when we're afraid. Family, I've learned, isn't just about blood. It's about the choice to stay when leaving would be easier. It's Emma choosing Cole over comfort, Cole choosing responsibility over freedom, a whole town choosing to see beyond a man's past to his potential. These choices, small as they seem, build bridges stronger than any storm can break. Gratitude comes not from having everything, but from recognizing what we have. Cole discovered this in Emma's trust, in Sarah's unwavering faith, in the simple grace of being given a second chance. We all deserve such grace, don't we? To be more than our worst moments, to find family in unexpected places, to discover that home isn't a location, but a decision to love and be loved. That's all any of us really need.